Hi, I'm Michael Christensen, and I'm giving you permission to steal. Okay, let me clarify. Steal from other writers. Okay, how about this? Don't be afraid to be influenced by other things. Okay, look. You are influenced by the things you write. That's never going to change. And you can spend your entire writing career worrying about that. It's very easy to do. Going through and thinking, oh my gosh, this is too similar to X or too similar to Y, no one's going to read it. And that's only valid to a point. Because at the end of the day, we need to remind ourselves that there are only like 10 stories in the world, and it's okay if people know that you like some of them. None of us are Neil Gaiman. I don't think we need to clarify that, unless you are Neil Gaiman, in which case, please subscribe. None of us have the career Neil Gaiman has. He's had a very specific trajectory as a writer, and even if we tried to replicate it, we couldn't. But we can learn something from it, which is that if you're open about what influences your writing, it's not a turnoff to other people. I don't have a copy of The Graveyard Book, but The Graveyard Book is inspired by The Jungle Book. That's the whole premise. Neverwhere is an Alice in Wonderland riff. Stardust, American Gods, especially Coraline, all of these borrow from the same genre as Alice in Wonderland or Narnia or Wizard of Oz. It's all about someone going into a world. Usually, sometimes it's a secret world inside our world, your Neverwheres, your American Gods, but sometimes it's just a weird place, a weird magic place. And he's open about the fact that there are stories that have inspired him. He'll talk in his short story collections about articles or essays or moments that led to books that he wrote. It's not a bad thing, really. I think Graveyard Book is probably the most specific because it's just The Jungle Book, but find replace jungle for graveyard for the title. That's the premise. That's the jumping off point. And he says that in the intro to the book. He's very open about it. There are writers out there like Alexa Dunn, an author tuber, who says flat out, I am doing Jane Eyre in space. That's okay. We can talk about our influences. I think there's an impulse, and it comes from an earlier generation of writers to sort of hold some of that stuff back, as if to say, you don't need to know where my influences came from. And I think that's a bad impulse because it mystifies a process that doesn't need to be. Coming up with ideas for writers is not the most important thing writers do. Everyone has ideas, they just don't write the books. We as writers spend so much time, too much time, treating our ideas as precious, as things that must be protected. I'm guilty of this too. I don't talk about what my books are about on this channel because I don't want anyone to hear an idea and take it. And I don't need to worry about that because if I just tell you what my book is about, just the premise, you're not going to write the same book as me. It's okay for me to say that the wizard novel premise is My Fair Lady about wizards. You're not going to write the same book as me just because you've heard that premise. And it's okay for someone reading that book to know that's an influence. I think you can go too far. I think Stephen King tends to spoil his own books in his introductions, especially look, Salem's Lot is a very old book, but if you're reading Salem's Lot and you have no idea what the book's about, you open the introduction and he just tells you it's a Dracula riff. Well, okay, maybe I didn't want to know there were vampires in this book, but knowing that it's a modern day retelling of Dracula, where different characters fill the roles that the main characters had in Dracula, that does not detract from Salem's Lot. That does not detract from the book. Again, none of us are going to have the exact same career as Stephen King. That's impossible at this point. But these people did find success, and they were open about their influences. They were open about their inspirations. What do we know about some of the most beloved pop culture in the world? We know that Star Wars was created because George Lucas could not get the rights to Flash Gordon. We know Buffy the Vampire Slayer was created because there were certain tropes in horror movies and the same kind of girl got killed in so many of them that it got very tired and repetitive, and it was time to see that character survive and be ready for the horrors in the alley. We know that the Fantastic Four I should have done them as the fourth example and not the third. Well, anyway, we know the Fantastic Four exist because Justice League was doing better numbers at DC than anything that was being published at Marvel, and they wanted a team book. And we know that the lineup is the way it is because Jack Kirby created the Challenges of the Unknown and knew it would work, knew he could just replicate the exact same formula on Fantastic Four. Okay, maybe that's not what everyone thinks of when they think of Fantastic Four, but that knowledge is out there. Jack Kirby was open about it. We know that, I should have switched these two. Iron Man is inspired by Howard Hughes. It's very obvious when you look at the original art and the original books. Like, they were just doing a Howard Hughes fan fiction. Boy, I've never thought about it in that context before. That's awfully weird. Because I think we have this misinterpretation, this misunderstanding that the premise, that the idea is what is most important. And it's not necessarily. Even for high concept stories, it's okay to know what it's inspired by. Speed is a really great movie. It is just Die Hard on a bus. That's how it was sold. That was the premise. We take Die Hard, we put it on a bus. Now, obviously, it's a little bit different because he's not fighting his way through terrorists on a bus, but it's a lone cop with no support or on the phone with people who aren't really able to help him dealing with an evil terrorist. So it's Die Hard, it's just on a bus. That doesn't make that movie good. What makes that movie good is the fact that it's a good movie. It's a good movie. You should watch Speed. It's a good movie. And not knowing that or knowing that doesn't change your opinion of that movie at all. Just like knowing that this is essentially Alice in Wonderland doesn't change whether this book is good. It is good. You should read it. I just bought a copy of Dante's Inferno. I've been curious to read it, but one of the funny things about this book is that it's about Dante. He just writes it about himself meeting up with another poet that he liked because he wanted you to know that he liked Virgil, the poet. And he put a lot of people he did not like into this book. Now, do you want to do that? I don't know. You should do the Writers Are Weird tag. I just did it a couple weeks ago, and I talked about, do you include people that you know in your stories as people you don't like? We know what Dante would have answered. But the point is, we know what Dante was thinking when he wrote that book, and that doesn't change the quality of the book. Unless it does. Like I said, I haven't read it yet. But I think we need to stop being afraid to say, my wizard novel is My Fair Lady, but with wizards. My superhero novel started as a riff on X-Men or Smallville. That was many, many versions ago. Now the two biggest influences are Percy Jackson and Soon I Will Be Invincible, a book that most people have not read. You should read it, it's good, but the way that it talks about superheroes, the way that it addresses them within the world is a huge influence on my story. And I shouldn't be afraid to say that, because hopefully knowing that doesn't change how you feel about the story. Now, I do think you can go too far. I think that you can write something that is too referential or too homage-y to something else. It doesn't bother me as much with novels as it does with like movies and TV shows, really. If you're doing a movie that's just a riff on a different movie, like, I don't know, introduce some other elements. Star Wars was not just a Flash Gordon riff. It introduced, samurai cinema elements to it as well, and Western elements. So it's okay to start with one premise and then add other things in. But, we watched The Mandalorian, and there are some scenes, some episodes, some shots that are directly lifted from Westerns or samurai films, and that's okay. It's okay to say, this meant a lot to me. I think it would mean something to you too, so I'm going to present it in a new way in my story. So yeah, steal from the best. Steal from what you think is cool. And I'm not saying that you should have a direct lift, but it's okay to be influenced by other things and to not have to hide that. We're all influenced by what we read and what we care about, and it's kind of silly to put up this false front that everything we write came out of nowhere, came out of a vacuum, got plucked off of an idea tree. Because we all take ideas and inspiration from the things around us. We should be able to say that. Anyway, The Great Gatsby is in the public domain now, so steal from that liberally and make it better. Because all those characters are jerks. If you like this video, please hit the like button. It means a lot to me, and it means even more to me if you subscribe. I'm trying to reach 200 subscribers by the end of March, and once I do, I will give away a free audiobook credit to somebody on the subscription list, somebody who follows me. You can get an audiobook and get influenced by it and put things from it into your story in a way that is not plagiarism. We should talk about that some other time as well, but don't plagiarize. But don't try so hard to seem original if you want to do something else. Do you agree with me? Let me know in the comments below, because I feel like people might have opinions about this. Thank you so much for watching. I love you, Victoria.